Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Friday, January 21st. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 225 days. The game against Michigan in 310 days. The upcoming Ohio State football season will mark year 4 of the Ryan Day era. That seems kind of hard to believe, honestly, but it is also year 3 of one of the new traditions that Day has introduced at Ohio State. That is the Block O jersey. Back in 2019, the NCAA legalized the jersey number 0 for use during games. Day turned it into an honor within the Buckeye program. It's awarded annually to a player who has fought through adversity and epitomizes the Ohio State football program's culture best. So in 2020, it went to Jonathon Cooper. Last fall, it was awarded to Thayer Munford. So who should get it this season? That is the question we are going to deal with today. Buckeye Scoop's Marc Givler is my guest this morning. He and I were just part of a roundtable discussion, but this very topic at the site this week. Marc, thanks for joining me.
Good to be here.
So what's interesting to me about this conversation is that in each of the last 2 years, it was kind of like, oh yeah, that's a great choice. Maybe that's the choice. Not that Chris Olave couldn't have worn it last year or Haskell Garrett or somewhere like that, but those both, Munford and Cooper, both seemed like uniquely good choices. This year, there was kind of an immediate consensus on our board, and then the 4 staff members who picked someone all picked different people away from that consensus. I don't think we were all intentionally being contrarians. I think there are some really good choices this year. So let's start with that board consensus. I will admit also it was the first name that I thought of as well, Zach Harrison. What would make Zach a good choice this year?
Yeah, and I actually think if I had to predict who was going to wear it, I would predict it's going to be Zach. So I'll start there. I actually think he's the front runner to actually be the one guy who wears it this fall. But I think he fits a lot of the criteria that makes sense. He's a senior. He's going to be a captain. Spoiler alert. But, you don't have to worry about, having to, as someone kind of mentioned on the board the other day, you're not going to have to worry about taking it away from him in 2 years because he won't be back after this year. But he's really a great kid, great young man. Does a lot in the community. Very generous with his time with kids and, would go and read to children, even back as far as high school. So he, the community service component and the leadership component is all there. And he's one of their most recognizable veterans on that'll be returning on the team next year. So, he checks all the boxes and would be a great choice.
Yeah, he was one of the representatives. There were only 3 last year at Big Ten Media Days. And he was one of them. And I remember thinking it was kind of a surprise because he'd been kind of quiet and had not really been like a real vocal leader before that. But if you were picked to do that 1 year and then you're back another year, I mean, obviously that makes you someone who's probably right at the front of the line for captaincy. And yeah, I think he is one of the free spaces on the who will be the 2022 Ohio Captains bingo card. So he is a very good pick. And I think I'm with you. I think he might be the most likely. You had a different pick though, and it was a name that I wasn't necessarily thinking of because it was someone who's doesn't fit the mold necessarily exactly of the 2 guys who have won it in the past, but it was a really interesting pick. Probably someone that Ohio State fans have at least heard of once or twice before. Who did you choose and why?
Yeah, I picked CJ Stroud and it didn't go over very well on the board. So I'm in a very small group that thinks that would make sense. Look, it can't be an offensive lineman again. You can't have this tradition and then just no one ever wears it for games. So we got to get away from the offensive line here. So sorry, DeJuan Jones. I know everyone wants to see DeJuan Jones with a huge 0 jersey, but I don't think that should happen. My thoughts were kind of 2-pronged. First of all, I do think Stroud fits some of the past criteria. Yes, he's not a senior. He's not a 5th year guy. Anything like that. I think he's going to be a captain this year. We'll see. I also think it's going to be his last year in Columbus. If he has anything close to the year we expect him to have, he's going to be a very highly thought of NFL prospect. And that could be it for him after this year. So I don't think you have to worry about him wearing it and then returning unless he gets injured or something. And, I was thinking a little bit outside the box as well. This is a brand new tradition. There's so many traditions at Ohio State that people are familiar with around the country. And this is one that people aren't familiar with. If you asked, SEC fans or even other Big Ten fans of other schools what the Blocko jersey tradition is at Ohio State, I don't know that they would have an answer for you. I certainly think a large percentage of people would not be able to tell you what this is. So, what better way to bring some exposure to this tradition and maybe get some stories flowing about Bill Willis? His story, obviously, I think everyone knows the Jackie Robinson story at this point. I mean, there's been a movie. There's, you learn about Jackie Robinson in school. I mean, you learn about Jackie Robinson, junior high. Even if you're not a sports fan. I'm a hockey fan. Willie O'Ree broke the color barrier in hockey. That's been just all over the news the last couple of years. They've really pushed that the last few years. You don't hear much about the pro football color barrier. You don't hear much about Bill Willis being tied to that. And so I think if CJ Stroud wears that jersey, he's returning as someone with either the first or second best odds of winning the Heisman. So he's going to be in the Heisman discussion all year. He was obviously a Heisman finalist this past year. You're going to get a lot of national media asking, why'd you change your number to 0? That's weird. Why did that happen? And just so those questions will lead to stories, and then people, oh, there's a Block O tradition. What's that about? And before you know it, you've got this whole media, tour of the Block O tradition and Bill Willis and what he meant and everything else. So I think from a marketing standpoint, it makes a ton of sense. Now, does CJ want to wear that number as a quarterback? I don't know. I'm still not sure if maybe that's why Chris Olave didn't. I don't know. Maybe these guys don't want the 0. I know that's not a traditionally a popular number that guys are hoping to wear. So maybe there's something to that, and the big guys don't care as much about the numbers because they don't get to wear fun single digit numbers anyway. But I think it makes a lot of sense to bring some awareness both to the tradition and to Bill Willis.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea because, Ohio State is going to play Rutgers again this year. Ohio State is going to play Maryland again this year. So that means there's going to be a lot of second halves of football games on TV where the announcers are looking for something to talk about. And that seems like something that would just be, the every single week if you watch all 12 regular season Ohio State football games, you are probably going to hear this at least 10 times, kind of factoids that everyone about mid-October starts rolling their eyes at, but does raise awareness probably across at least the Midwest. And if they're playing Notre Dame, you probably hear about it during the Notre Dame game, and that's going to be a very watched game. So yeah, that is a very interesting idea. I hadn't thought about that angle of it, but yeah, in terms of raising awareness of it, yeah, for sure. That would be a significant way to do that. My pick was wide receiver Cameron Babb, and he was someone who came to Ohio State as a really elite wide receiver prospect. He was, in that same range as all the other wide receivers who have had these incredible careers under Brian Hartline. And 4 years in, he has only played in 7 games, not yet caught a pass. And it is all because of knee injuries. He suffered 4 ACL injuries going back to high school. He missed all of the 2018, all of the 2019, all the 2021 seasons. He played in 7 of the 8 games in 2020, didn't catch a pass, played on special teams. He was, a kick coverage and punt coverage in the national championship game and all that kind of stuff. So he was a contributor to that team, but just has not been able to kind of break into that wide receiver rotation. If that was not 2020 and he played a full season in 2021, I'm sure he would have quite a few catches at this point, but that was a weird season in so many ways. He is someone who his teammates think highly enough of that he was out for last year with a knee injury and he was still elected a captain. And that speaks pretty highly to me, so if he plays this fall and, we'll see, he could decide he's done with football. He could, not be back yet in terms of rehab, whatever. We got to just kind of see how that goes for him this spring. But if he's back this fall, I think he would be my pick. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he was probably. I honestly, I considered 3 guys when we were doing the story. I considered CJ Stroud, Zach Harrison, and Cam Babb were the 3 I thought about. I think he fits a lot of certainly the profile as a veteran, senior, captain type guy, perseverance, leadership, very, very popular in the locker room, very good representative of the program. So I think he fits all that. I fell back into the same thing of why I didn't consider like a DeJuan Jones or an offensive lineman is like, is the jersey going to be worn? Is he going to play? Is going to be able to play? And if not, again, I 2 years in a row where the jersey isn't really being worn during games and you're trying to build this tradition, was kind of, I guess, my put it in the cons column. That was kind of my cons or argument against Cam Babb, but everything else makes perfect sense.
And if you're wondering why Mark says they couldn't wear it, the offensive lineman, so Thayer Munford wore it or won it in 2021, but offensive linemen have to wear jerseys numbered 51 to 79. So you cannot be an offensive lineman and wearing number 0. You could be a defensive lineman, but not an offensive lineman and wearing it during games. So you would see Thayer Munford on with it during warm-up sometimes, or team photo opportunities. You'd see him with the number 0 on, but not during games. That's why Mark has mentioned that a couple times. Tony Gerdeman and Kevin Noon were the other two people who did this little exercise with us. They both went with different players, but kind of similar reasoning for both of them. One of them, I think it was Tony, went with Cade Stover. Kevin went with Steel Chambers. Both of those guys have changed positions in their past for the good of the program during their careers. I thought those were two very interesting thoughts as well, who, a little bit of a different twist on what it means to be, to win that honor.
Yeah. I look at those guys though, and I see two possible front runners for 2023. Mm-hmm. Both guys have multiple years of eligibility left. Both guys, I think, will want to use those multiple years of eligibility they have left. Maybe Chambers could have just a breakout season, but I tend to think both will be back 2 years from now for the 23 season. So I think maybe a year off on those. But yeah, I got to know both pretty well during the recruiting process, especially Cade Stover, just being, about an hour north here of Columbus. But two of the best kids you'll ever meet, hardworking guys, very smart, again, great leadership qualities, and have shown a selfless sort of nature since they arrived in the program, changing positions and just kind of doing everything that's been asked of them. So I think, again, to kind of go into the the Zach Harrison, Cameron Babb type of dialogue about what the honor means and everything like that, I think they would all fit that. I just look at them and I think, okay, maybe a year away from that.
Yeah, so that'll be something that we'll go all the way through spring camp. We'll go all the way through, summer workouts and all that kind of stuff, and then into fall camp before we actually find out who will be wearing the Block O jersey. That comes out sometime during fall camp. So we'll be standing outside a hotel taking pictures of teenagers walking in even before we find this out. So we got a little time before we get to that. But so we'll have plenty more time to debate this. I guess that's the most important thing. So that'll be 7 months from now, 6 months from now, long time. So lots of time to talk about that and everything else between now and then. One more note before we go. This weekend's basketball game against Nebraska was canceled due to COVID issues within the Huskers program. So Ohio State scheduled a game against IUPUI on Tuesday. They won that by 1 trillion points. It was really just oh boy, we got to get some more reps before we get into the heart of Big Ten season. Get another game in, and then now there's no game this weekend. So no Ohio State men's basketball game this weekend. So you will have to find something else to do with your time on Saturday. And so now Ohio State's next men's basketball game is Thursday against Minnesota in Minnesota. So that's it'll be another 9-day layoff for Chris Holtman's team. I would imagine that's probably getting a little bit old for them right now. So that'll do it for today. You can make sure you, now that you have all this free time on your Saturday and no basketball to fill it, you can fill it by listening to some of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, you name it. We're there. Buckeye Weekly, Tony Gerdeman and I have been dropping new shows daily this week. The Big Me Kickoff Show with Kevin Noon, that he's supposed to have a new episode coming up, I think later on today or this weekend, that we've talked about a little bit behind the scenes, and it sounds like it's going to be a good one. The Gives in the Bank podcast that Mark and Bill Green do is always fantastic. They dropped a new episode this week. And you can also find the Around the Oval podcast with Alex Gleitman. He did an episode of Tony Gritterman this week, so you can find that as well. You can find all those just by searching Buckeye Scoop. Wherever you find this podcast, you can just find those. You can also find them on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. Wherever you're watching this, if you're watching it there, hit that thumbs up button, and you can also hit the bell, subscribe to our channel. That way you get notified every time we post a new video. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.